if we start, all I want to do is start by positioning a number of key things before we get into what we're describing as these flight paths. Today, we're talking about a flight path to build control within the manufacturing process, but it's worth doing some just pre-ramble in advance of that before we get into the specifics, which the rest of the team will take you through. So my name's Carl Evans, work for Rolls-Royce, been involved with this stuff for many years, very passionate about it, and hopefully you feel the same. So next slide, please. We're using Slido today. You should have the QR code activated. If not, please use the one on screen now. But we'd be interested in, first of all, to make this interactive, I'm interested in your views that, do you believe APQP delivers improved quality? Please use the Slido. You don't need to use the chat. And if you're unclear how to use Slido, just pick a phone up, scan the QR code, put that password, which is APQP in, and you'll find it will activate the Slido, and then you'll be also able to interact with us all the way through this session. So at the moment, we've got 64 people on the line, 21 have answered the question. Let's give you a little bit of time just to have a few more people. It feels that there is a lot of you on the line that do believe that it can deliver an improvement in quality. That's great. And there's a level of uncertainty. Interesting, no one says no yet. Okay, I'll give you a moment more, because then it also allows you a chance just to get used to Slido if you're not used to it. But what you should be seeing is a question coming up on your phone or the medium you use to activate this Slido. And then that allows you to answer questions when we put them up on the presentations. Hopefully you feel that makes it far more interactive for you. Okay, so majority of you feel yes, it does. And there's a level of uncertainty. So we move on to the next slide, please. I just want to start. Let's position something simply in your mind. What we want to do is express what we'll describe as a flight through APQP. In the context of what we're talking today, it's very much about ultimately building control into the process, and the outcome of that is good quality. And that's what we're steering towards. If you could reveal one more part of this slide. I just want to refer to experiences I've seen. This is an example of a product. If you're not familiar with this is a shaft which goes right down the center of an engine. To make it a bit more real to you, if you stand it upright, it's about the size of the average human being. It has over 250 features on it, and a lot of those features have tolerances down to less than 1/70th of the thickness of a hair. So it's a big thing. There's an awful lot of design requirements to it, and a lot of those design requirements are very, very challenging to produce. In this case, the team that was involved with this, they went through a journey which we're describing today, and their outcome was for this product, the very first parts were concession free. I've put some wordage on the slide in regards to what the engineers were talking about, but the essence of this is this was the first time they were experiencing this type of product as being concession free at first parts. Massive, significantly important statement, a massive change. And how do they see that taking place? And it's in their opinion, it's the rigorous application of APQP, and in this case, really driving towards high capability values such as 2CPK. The other point of reflection before we get into the whole webinar is certainly we're in Rolls-Royce when we reflect over the years of different projects. So when I talk about a project, I'm talking about major change programs. We definitely see results which have a mapping between the greater, what I would describe, intensity of APQP being applied, the far better quality results we gain. And what do I mean by that intensity? I'm not on about solely how you do this detailed pieces of work, but it's actually how well you apply it across the suite of parts involved, how much interaction is through a cross-functional working. Let's face it, if you're not aware, APQP is definitely a team sport, and it's not down to one function, it's multiple functions. And the other piece about intensity is how well you integrate project management. If we could move on one, please. So today we're focusing what we call the flight path builds process control in the manufacturing process. Top level answers we hear regularly are, in terms of process control, how does APQP enable that? Who, how, when should we plan for this stuff? And then let's make a little link to what's the relationship with PPAP opposed to what's the relationship with APQP. And that's what we're gonna strive to answer today in this webinar. We are going to point to you at points through this webinar to certain reference manuals, the RMs. The three we're going to be referring to is 13145, the APQP PPAP one, 13004 defect prevention tools, and 13006 process control methods. At points through here, we will even go to the level of going, when we've talked about something called elements and a particular element, we'll even show you where you can actually go, and even down to a chapter or a table or a key piece of information. We'll point you to where you can go and find more information after. So we want this to be helpful for you when you go once we finish this webinar. I do have to put the advert out, quite rightly so. These are not the only reference manuals which are important to refer to. There are other ones, but today we're just going to be picking on these three particularly and point you to certain things in there as we go through here. If you're not aware about reference manuals, through this session we'll be pointed to the supplements page and you can access these. The great thing about this is they're free. We charge nothing for them. Next slide, please. So to get the ball rolling, to make this interactive, I am massively keen for you to do a test. If you could just hide that last reveal, please, go back one. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to now ask you guys, there's 67 people on the line, that means there's 66 highly qualified inspectors I'm going to ask to carry out a task now. In a moment, we're going to reveal a paragraph of words, and what I'm going to ask you to do is count how many F's you can see. And this is something you can use back in your businesses another day. So it has a dual purpose. There's a message behind this. But what I'm going to do is ask for this to be revealed in a moment, and I give you 60 seconds. What I would ask you to do is count how many F's you see on screen, and then we'll close this down and come back to the main points of this. So starting now, could you start counting how many F's you see in this paragraph? You don't have to put it in the chat. You don't have to do anything other than count. Remember that you're highly qualified inspectors, the best in the world. Shouldn't be a problem to do this. And if we could now go on to the next, blank that off, please. Don't tell us how many you've got at all. Just take a moment, think to yourself, what do you believe your inspection result is? Make a note of it, whatever you feel. And if we could reveal the next slide, please. So in Slido, you've been asked, how many do you feel there is? Please feel free to start putting in how many you believe there is. So those of you watching on screen, you'll see there's a varied bit of numbering going on. There's a number which are saying 25, 26, 36, 35. There's quite a variation coming up. What we're definitely seeing amongst the audience is nobody is actually, we're not all saying the same number. We've got a level of variation going on, and maybe in a reflection, maybe we should have shown this as a histogram to make it a bit easier, but what you will see is on screen, there is no consistent number appearing. There's different views, different thoughts. There's definitely quite a few in the area of 30. There's definitely quite a few in the area of 20s, I'm saying. We've got about 33, so about over a third of you have given an answer. A clear message what's coming through at the moment here is we have no consistency on a test, which is to read a paragraph and count how many letters there are. If we can move on one slide, please. Maybe it would have been far easier displaying it in this way and highlighting the Fs. Well done. I think there was 1 or 2 people who put 36 in. Well done, you. The rest of you must have felt like a goalkeeper trying to work this one out. What's the point here is this is what could be conceived as something that is fairly simple to count a number of Fs in a paragraph, yet we have an incredible amount of variation on what we believe the result is. Is therefore inspection a robust way of operating? Not necessarily. Okay. Could we move on one slide, please? So with that thought in mind, what we're not saying is inspection's a bad thing to do. That is not what we're saying. But when we want to go on a zeros defects journey, let's think of things slightly differently. I'm going to use a very, very simple image, example of a Nissan car and a badge. The inspection here is to check it's the right way round. That is the activity that is taking place. But what if, let's reveal the next piece, please. What if we then take a different view and go, what if in a zero defects world, think of it differently. What if we build control into the process? What if we ultimately design the product in the example I'm going to give you now to not allow it to be other than anything other than the correct orientation? So what we want to get over today is there's a number of messages, but what we want to either think about is there is a place for inspection. There's nothing wrong with it. We're not trying to trash inspection, but what we want to do is really think when we pioneer towards zero defects, that the power of building control in the process, in this example, it's saying, well, what happens about one-off checks within the actual manufacturing line for the Nissan car? And ultimately, and if you squint your eyes really, really, really carefully at the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, you'll actually see there's an error proof built on that badge. So we don't even need a level of inspection taking place with that error proof in place. We don't even need in process controls. That badge has been designed so that it can only ever orientate in one direction, in one way of looking at. And these are really important messages to hold true. If we can move on one, please. So I'm just going to tee up ready for my colleagues to talk about this lower level flight path. Just to highlight a couple of topics, keywords in the language of APQP. I'm going to do this pretty quick, but what I will refer you to, and you can take a screenshot of this, we'll point you to this afterwards, but there is a webinar which has gone out recently, and it talks about this section, which I'm going to do very, very quickly in a lot more detail about starting to take to pieces APQP in a very simplistic way and how to look at it, and then how all the detail constructs in it. You can find that on our post-event site. That's what you see on screen. We'll make sure that you could see, you'll be able to find this afterwards as well with the information we'll share. But the point is, I'm going to now just talk very simply on some key messages to tee things up for the follow-on presentations, follow-on of this webinar. Next slide, please. So, just a few things, some keywords we're going to be touching on as we go through the webinar today. One is something called PPAP, APQP and PPAP events. In a concept of a flight analogy, just think of these events as our in-flight checks. So APQP is going to take us from one position to another position. The starting point for APQP is very much about planning our flight. We get to something called PDR, we take off, we get into doing all the detail, and then we land at the end at production launch. So the events play a part left to right on that journey as checkpoints in our flight. Next piece to reveal, please. Up front, we talk in APQP language around something called the planning deliverables. If you know the ins and outs of this, you will know there's 8 of these. We're not going to major on these today. We will touch on a little bit of it at the end in the concept of how do you plan for this stuff. But there's something called planning deliverables up front. If you could reveal the next piece, please. The main bit we want to talk to today is talk around this subject called APQP and PPAP elements, and that's what we're going to focus you on. There's some under the banner of phase 2, which is the product design. If you could reveal the next couple, please. There is another one, and there's another set of elements which sit under process design development, and then finally the product and process validation elements. So we're going to center this session on that area. Why are we doing that? Is because a number of those elements really support zero defects, and they're really strong in preventing defects as deliverables. So if you reveal the next one, please. So we're going to get into a description now in a moment through my colleagues of how do you take a flight path through APQP and which elements should you focus on and when. If you're aware of RM 13145, we break a number of elements out. There's 27 plus 2 customized ones. Out of that string of 27, we're going to be talking about, we're going to home in on these particular ones today. And the final reveal, please. And what you're going to see is that when we walk through the presentations, we are going to relate back to AS 13100 Rev A. There's the image to the left, which relates to Chapter B, which is what's known as the APQP timing chart. And then on the right-hand side, there's a connectivity diagram, which is in Chapter C. And we're going to draw attention to those as we fly through this flight path. Just a quick, simple reference for you. When we talk about phases, we have phase 2. We're going to be focusing on phase 3 and phase 4. The relationships between those two diagrams are what's mapped on the screen now. Move to the last slide, please. So before we start, another Slido question. In your opinion, reflecting on your knowledge, how would you rate your knowledge when we talk about process control? That's great. That's 3 people so far. We could wrap those bits up. It's great. So we got quite a bit, somewhat, basic. Dynamically, it's changing nicely as you keep putting your ratings in. Don't worry, we're not going to be assessing you on these. We're not going to seek you out afterwards based on your scores. We won't know who's done what. We're just trying to gauge the audience's knowledge and make sure this feels interactive to you. Okay, we're on about 1/3 of the way through of people. Let's just let a few more come on, and then what we'll do is move to the next section, which my colleagues Rob and Eric will be taking over on. Great, thank you for that. So let's hand over now to Rob and Eric.